Good afternoon, guys. It's Zach. I came across some absolutely damning information about coffee, and I dove into it because at first, and I've noticed that when I post stuff on Facebook that's negative about coffee, the attacks start to happen. And I think it's very clear that the addiction is real because people get super upset about it. But this is the book, Caffeine Blues, and I've watched a ton of other videos on YouTube of other people like covering the topics and stuff. But related to carnivore, which is I think super important because I feel like this actually the coffee and caffeine might actually be some of the reasons why people are not getting the results they want on carnivore. Especially when it comes to digestion, because one of the things that's covered in this book, and it's Caffeine Blues by Stephen Chernisky. But the guy documents a lot of the stuff, and everything he says makes sense. If he basically relates it to your own reactions to coffee, which we've all had, right? The first thing is coffee doesn't increase energy. As a matter of fact, it lowers your energy outside of the windows that you're drinking it. So you have to drink it all the time. It's the most profitable industry, food industry there is. I mean, caffeine addiction is it's awesome for the food companies because you're hooked. You have to have it, and you think that you need it to function, but you're not really functioning. You're functioning less than you would if you were just free and clear of caffeine. And I've quit caffeine a few times in the past. This most recent time, it's been close to a month, and after that first 2 or 3 weeks, you start to wake up and the fog goes away, But some of the things he covers are mineral blocking. For a carnivore, that's super important, right? How many times have you heard, somebody say, "Oh, I don't have enough minerals," or "My electrolytes are off." Caffeine by itself, and there's I want to say he said 200,000 chemicals in coffee, some of which we don't know what they do. One for sure that's not caffeine that's in coffee that he mentioned, hey Zen, be quiet, is it's a chemical that causes your cholesterol to go up. And for a fact, my cholesterol was in the 400s for most of my first year of carnivore. This most recent blood work that we did, my cholesterol went down 100 points. Only thing I did different was stop drinking coffee. 100 points. Because coffee causes your blood pressure to go up almost immediately. That's one of the effects we've known for a while, and they've tested and they said, oh, it's not that bad. So the problem is that coffee causes a cortisol release. Cortisol causes a lot of hormones to stop being produced. Cortisol, can cause like inflammation in a local area to go away, but systemic long-term cortisol, we know that that's damaging to the body. We know that it has negative effects, right? So the main premise is that you feel like you're awake, but you're really just alert because you're in fight or flight, like, oh fuck, there's a lion coming after me mode, which makes your pupils actually dilate a little bit. You can zero in on stuff, but long term, we're doing this every day, tapping into that system messes up your hormones, your DHEA, which is responsible for kind of being happy and not depressed. How many people do we know that are depressed that are on coffee? Almost all of them, right? They actually use coffee to make themselves feel better. So you get that temporary relief, but long term it messes up your hormones to the point where you can't get happy because you're locked in this cycle of not being able to produce it, So I know everybody says, oh, there's all these studies that say coffee is good. Coffee is a neurotoxin. There's no justification to say that a cortisol spike or release in epinephrine is a positive thing for the body. Okay? It is positive temporarily to get you out of a situation, but there are still downstream effects after that happens, right? If you ever done something that's exciting and then your adrenaline's going and but then afterwards you're tired, because it was like a rush, like, oh man, I made it through that, but afterwards you're just zonked, right? And that's kind of the same thing. Since I've been off coffee, both me and my wife agreed that our energy level through the whole day is just awesome. Waking up is easier. Everything is just so much better. And I've noticed that just calmness and like like, you know, our reactions to things are a lot better, and it just seems like such a, you know, a fog that was just over us this whole time. You know, we always thought coffee was good. And I also found out in the book, he talks about how Bill Gates saved Starbucks back in the 1980s from bankruptcy. And it's like, anything Bill Gates does, you know, it's bad, right? Anything he does is just like completely fucked up and, you know, against a human agenda for sure. But now there's like Starbucks at every fucking street corner, you know? And if you go to Starbucks, you know, you got to worry about mold. You got to worry about the BPA from the cups that they're giving you. Starbucks is terrible. There's no benefit to going to Starbucks whatsoever. But, you know, the main... Oh, you know what? I forgot to use my microphone. If you weren't hearing me well, crank this in and see if this works better. Forgot to plug it in. There we go. That might be better. Let's see. Yeah. So, but, you know, and the other things that he covers are, you know, like people that have panic and anxiety disorders. Caffeine is terrible for that. It can lead to strokes. It absolutely contributes to heart disease. And people say, oh, that's not true. Really? Because heart disease kills more people than any other thing there is, right? Heart disease is the number 2 killer. It's more than cancer. More people get heart disease and die from heart disease and heart attacks than cancer. So, and what is the cause? Oh, people say, oh, vegans die from heart attacks. So, you know, there's obviously some sort of stress factor, whether it's from our food or whether from toxins or whatever poison. There's definitely a stress factor. But man, I want to get that message out there for carnivores, because if you're not getting the results that you want, and he mentioned especially dangerous for your vascular system is like working out. So like pre-workouts, which I took for 20 years, right? So cortisol causes stress response. Blood pressure goes up. Working out is a stress on the body. Blood pressure goes up even more. But what happens when you're drinking caffeine is that is compounded. So you get a slight blood pressure raise from drinking a little coffee. But if you have an event that would have otherwise already raised your blood pressure, it's compounded. So my reaction to the stress throughout my entire day is worse because of the stress that I had in the morning, right? But me and my wife were talking about it. You know, we can kind of see the difference between, you know, like how we were, you know, 5 years ago, you know, drinking caffeine and you know, all the time, and energy drinks and this and that, and like we would always be irritable, you know, and always crash at 2 or 3 o'clock. But what I don't want to happen is for people to do carnivore and then to be told, oh, caffeine's fine, which I've told people that, you know, because I did it. But I mean, it will inhibit results. It will make you less happy than you're supposed to be. It will make you more irritable, less productive. You know, and I don't want you to argue with me about it. I don't care what your opinion is on it. Read this book, okay? And if after reading that book, and everybody that argues with me, I tell them to go read the book. I mean, after their response, I could tell they probably haven't read a book in 5 years, and you know, that's kind of their way of keeping their reality alive, is to not educate themselves and to just argue with anyone that they disagree with. I don't really give a shit, right? I'm not telling you what to do with your body. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. But I'm feel a responsibility, because I've trained and coached a lot of people, and I've put a lot of information out there, and I've said that caffeine was good, and I disagree now. I will never have caffeine ever again. I just don't see a benefit. You know, it's a toxin that's designed to kill bugs or keep things away. Like, why do we think that, you know, why would our body respond with a cortisol stress response to something that was good? He also covers the people, you know, all of those studies are all bullshit. They're all done by people that have interest in selling caffeine. And then people say, and I told somebody the other day, I was like, oh, you know, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, they pay for most of those things. They're like, why would Coke and Pepsi do it? Well, there's caffeine in Coca-Cola, right? Hershey's would pay for it.
Hershey's sells chocolate. There's caffeine in chocolate. It's an addictive substance, okay? There's caffeine in a lot of things. There's caffeine in a lot of medications, especially stuff that you can just walk in and buy. There's caffeine in other medications. You just probably aren't even aware that it's in there, right? There's caffeine in a lot of supplements. You really got to watch that. I mean, it's just, there's no real benefit to caffeine besides, the first 3-4 minutes. And then, it's kind of, it works the same way that a lot of amphetamines do. Like cocaine makes you feel really good for 5 minutes. Then you got to do more cocaine, right? So that's the issue. Even though it's a smaller level, it's still doing the same thing. You're still getting a stress response. You don't need to do it every 5 minutes, but some people do. I used to work with people that would get 5-6 cups of coffee a day during work, and it's like, man, your sleep will dramatically improve coming off caffeine, dramatically. And the other thing he covers, to really fully realize, especially if you've been on caffeine for a long time, to really fully realize the full benefits of coming off caffeine, it takes 60 days, okay? I think in the few times that I've quit and gone months at a time without it, that it's about 2 weeks for the brain fog to lift. And my wife's kind of seen that now. She's quitting coffee the first time, and she was an addict, man. I would ask her to quit. She'd say, no, that's my happiness, it's this. And she would literally get mad and angry. And it's like, that's an addict, right? He also covers, lack of blood flow to the brain. That's one of the things that happens. Why you get headaches after you stop drinking caffeine is because blood is rushing back to parts of your brain that it hasn't been. So cerebral blood flow has been inhibited and shown in MR in scans to be as much as 40%, right? How can you tell me that, how can you tell me that a 40% loss of blood to your brain is positive? He cites like some studies showing that it's released to, related to a lot of strokes in people. Those studies are all paid for by big companies. There's little parent companies or baby companies that they have that look unsuspecting, but the money is coming from the people that want you to be addicted to it, and they got you, man. They got you hooked. It's no different than cigarettes, right? But cigarettes, it's just like, it's still a slow poison, but cigarettes, 10, 15 years is when is about what you get, and then you start to have this extreme side effects. Caffeine is just very, you don't really notice the side effects. And then if you do, usually you'll blame it on something else because you've sold yourself this idea that, oh, caffeine's good for me. I need it to work. I need it to do this. But any other drug, if somebody said, oh, I need cocaine to do this, or I need cocaine to go to work or to focus, right? You'd be like, you're insane. You're a drug addict, right? If you argue that caffeine is good, you're drinking caffeine, you're an addict, right? You are hooked. You've given yourself a delusion, and you've sold yourself a bill of goods, right? Not to mention, he also covers in the book how fucking disruptive. One coffee tree produces about 3 pounds of coffee a year, which is not a lot, right? They tore down so many rainforests for this industry, and they blamed it on cows, okay? Yes, it's profitable, but they tore down rainforests to put these coffee trees in because you need a shit ton of them to come up with all the coffee that everyone needs. Yeah, man, I really want you to read this book. Don't take my word for it, but there are stories out there of other people that like me that discovered this and they stopped drinking coffee, and they're just like so much better for it, more productive. You will absolutely have more energy. Coffee does not give you energy. I promise you that. But anyway, I got the kids running around. I got 2 racks of ribs on the smoker. You got to pay attention to that. But please read the book. Oh, Caffeine Blues. Actually, I Google searched Caffeine Blues PDF, and you can get the PDF right off the internet and read it if you want to print it out. I mean, if you don't have to buy, I bought this book used on Amazon for $6. I think new it was like $9-10, something like that. So it's not that bad. And another thing I want to cover, because this happens a lot with Paul Saladino. Like I think Paul's very smart, right? I think Paul it's his reality that he has to have like all the fruit and the honey and the stuff, and you know, that's perfectly fine. But just because somebody says something that you disagree with doesn't mean you disagree with everything that person says. I see this so much. People, I'll post something that Paul said that was brilliant, right? And they'll say, oh, Paul's fruity, he likes to eat fruit. And it's like, okay, so does that mean you aren't wanting to listen to what he just said about this or that, which I think is absolutely true, right? He'll say things that are perfectly in line with me, and I've heard Dr. Chafee say this too, that we don't disagree on everything. That's his reality, and maybe that's the reality for some people, right? We don't know, you know, his situation or what's going on inside of him, but don't disregard, because like this guy in here actually says, you know, eat your vegetables and, you know, eat less meat, and he's, you know, keep your cholesterol low, and that's his paradigm too, right? So just because he discovered something about caffeine doesn't mean that he's, you know, all of a sudden got all the secrets to life. So somebody pointed that out. That was the first thing they want to do, is discredit him, because they think that carnivore is the way to eat, and so do I. But because he mentioned that, they're like, didn't want to have anything to do with the book. And I think, you know, that's partially probably because they're addicted to caffeine, so they wanted to, you know, immediately discredit this guy. But that's bullshit. You're a goddamn adult. Like, you understand that people don't always have all the answers. Hey, Zoe. Hi. Say hi. Yeah, but we're making a video about coffee.
Daddy?
And caffeine. What? Well, let's wait till I'm done with the video, okay?
But Daddy?
Nope, I gotta make the videos though. Okay. Thank you. See. But we told Zoe that we don't drink coffee anymore, and she's like, oh, but you guys like to have coffee in the morning, but she, you know. And we did, man. The coffee we buy is Purity coffee. I mean, it's $140 a bag, you know, for a 5-pound bag. So we loved our coffee. We spent a lot of money on coffee every month. But anyway, yeah, if you guys have any questions or comments, like, you know, if you have something to say positive with coffee, that's fine. Like, I get it. I was there too. Educate yourself. Just read it. You don't have to, you know, if you're scared to read it because you're going to learn something that's not true, well, you're an adult, right? Figure this shit out. But we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.